It started with a ping at 2:37 a.m., that soft chime my phone makes whenever the Ring camera detects motion. Half awake, I grabbed it expecting to see a raccoon nosing through trash or a delivery truck turning around in the cul-de-sac. Instead, there was nothing. Just the silent frame of my front porch, neat and empty, light snow drifting through the view. But the motion alert stayed active for a full minute, like something invisible was moving right beyond where the camera could see. A lot of people install them hoping for safety, to catch package thieves, to catch neighbors being stupid, or to check on their pets. But when you scroll through enough Ring footage, you notice patterns. People staring at houses they don't belong to, strangers whispering into microphones, unknown figures standing still in driveways at night. I've spent the last year collecting these recordings and the stories behind them. Some come from official police reports, others from people who swore to me they deleted their accounts after what they saw. These aren't urban legends or reenactments. They're slices of real life caught by cameras meant to protect us. And in every one of them, you'll sense the same quiet invasion. Someone, or something, always seems to know they're being watched, and they make the watching part personal. So tonight, we're going to open 10 front doors, metaphorically anyway, and see what came knocking. Some of these stories feel harmless at first. Some look like technical glitches, but every single one leaves a mark, even after the video ends. Because the truth is, home security doesn't always keep the fear out. Sometimes it just records it happening. Let's start with a story that seemed ordinary, a simple neighborhood mystery, until the homeowner realized the stranger caught on their feed wasn't just passing by. He was coming back, night after night, and he always arrived at 3 a.m. The camera belonged to a family in Maple Ridge, a suburb known for being the kind of place where people still wave when they jog past each other. They'd installed the Ring doorbell the previous winter after a string of petty car break-ins. Nothing dramatic, a few wallets, the occasional garage remote stolen, but enough to make everyone uneasy. It was mid-July when the alerts began. At exactly 3 o'clock every night, their motion sensor sent a notification. Each clip showed the same man, mid-40s maybe, tall, wearing a pale windbreaker. He never came close to the door. Just paced along the sidewalk, paused to look at the house, then walked out of frame. His movements were slow, deliberate, and somehow polite. At first, the father assumed it was coincidence, maybe a neighbor dealing with insomnia. But after the 5th night, his daughter mentioned she'd heard footsteps outside her window and the faint creak of gravel. The Ring footage confirmed the timing, 3:02 a.m. Every night the exact same pattern. Walk, stop, stare, leave. They filed a report. The local police checked the area, drove by during those hours, even reviewed neighboring cameras. Nothing. No one saw him except the lens on their porch. It became a nightly ritual, the family staying awake, lights off, waiting for the alert to go off again. It always did. By the 2nd week, they noticed small changes. Sometimes the man tilted his head as if listening. Sometimes he turned toward the camera and smiled faintly, like he knew someone was watching from inside. The mother suggested keeping the porch light on, hoping it would drive him away. Instead, it only made the footage clearer. You could see his features now. Clean-shaven, hair combed neatly back, eyes calm to the point of lifeless. One night, the father opened the door mid-recording, yelling for him to get off the property. The man didn't run. He simply turned the corner and vanished into the dark. No car, no bike, just gone. Police canvassed again. Nothing. Not even footprints in the damp soil. After 3 weeks, the alerts stopped. Relief set in. They muted the motion pings, tried to forget the routine. But one early morning in August, the camera recorded him again. This time he stood on the walkway facing the door, closer than ever. He lifted one hand, waved gently, then stepped sideways until only his shoulder remained visible. And in the next frame, he was gone. When they checked the timestamp, it read 3 a.m. exactly. Not a second more, not a second less. But here's what disturbed them most. The system log showed no motion detected before or after. The video existed, but according to the app, the camera had been idle all night. They contacted Ring support, assuming it was some glitch. The company confirmed that particular clip wasn't on their cloud server. It only existed locally on the app, which meant it had never uploaded. When they tried to re-watch it a day later, the file was corrupted, just static. Neighbors claimed they saw no one matching his description, though one woman recalled hearing humming in the distance around that hour, something that faded whenever she stepped outside. Eventually, the family moved the camera higher, repositioned it toward the street instead of the door. Months went by without another alert. They started to joke about their friendly ghost. Still, the father admitted to checking the app every night before bed. 6 months later, during a system update, the app automatically compiled a year-in-review montage, small clips set to cheerful background music, those highlight videos the service sometimes creates from stored footage. Among the snippets of mail deliveries and trick-or-treaters was one more familiar image. The tall man, mid-stride on the sidewalk, glancing at the camera with that same calm expression. The video ended with him lifting a hand in that slow wave. The date under the clip wasn't from the summer, though. It was December 23rd, 2 days before they even bought the camera. Whether he was real or an artifact buried somewhere in the feed, no one could say. But after that discovery, the father turned off notifications permanently. They thought that was eerie, until another camera in another household caught something that made getting a package at the door look far more personal. It started on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. The homeowner, a 32-year-old graphic designer named Ethan, was out of town visiting his parents. He'd installed his Ring camera the year before, mostly to watch for package thieves. When his phone buzzed with a notification that day, he thought nothing of it. The alert said, "Motion detected at front door." The thumbnail showed a man in a brown delivery uniform holding a box. The delivery looked normal, except Ethan hadn't ordered anything. The package was medium-sized, taped neatly, a white label printed but the address handwritten underneath. The feed showed the man bending down, setting the box carefully at the doorstep. Then he looked straight into the camera lens. For a few seconds he didn't move, just smiled faintly. No words, no wave. Then he turned, walked down the steps, and disappeared out of frame. Ethan figured it was a missed delivery. He texted his neighbor, Mike, asking if he was expecting anything. Mike said no, but he'd keep an eye on it until Ethan got back. At 6 p.m., Ethan opened the app again to double-check the clip. The thumbnail was still there, but the video wouldn't load. It just spun endlessly. He tried refreshing, downloading, rewinding, nothing. The file existed but refused to play. 2 days later he came home. The package was still sitting there, a faint ring of moisture around its base from dew. There was no sender printed on the label, just his full name and home address written in looping black ink. Curiosity tugged at him. He hesitated for a moment, half expecting something to tick inside the box, then carried it into the kitchen. The tape came away easily. Whoever sealed it had pressed it lightly, almost gently. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were photographs, dozens of them, printed on matte paper like they came from a home printer. Every photo was of Ethan, some from his public social media, others from vacations he'd taken years ago, but a few were impossible. Pictures of him at the grocery store, at his gym, walking the dog. Those last ones hadn't been posted anywhere. He checked them carefully. The angles were from across the street, sometimes over fences, always slightly off-center as if whoever took them didn't want to be noticed. Each one was dated in small, black handwriting along the bottom edge. The latest date matched the day the delivery man appeared on the camera feed. At first he thought it had to be a prank, Maybe his friends taking things too far. But when he called around, everyone denied knowing anything. That night, he decided to download the camera video again, wanting to see the man's face more clearly. The clip was gone, completely deleted from both his phone and the cloud account. He contacted Ring support, hoping they could retrieve it. They confirmed that the file had been auto-deleted due to privacy violation triggered by an internal flag. When asked what that meant, the representative couldn't explain. Later that evening, Ethan uploaded a short post to a neighborhood forum asking if anyone had received strange deliveries. A woman just a few blocks away replied within minutes. She said she once got a flat envelope full of magazine clippings and printed screenshots of her own Instagram feed. No return address. The next day, the envelope disappeared from her counter before she could take it to the police. Ethan read that message 3 times, uneasy. Then his phone buzzed again. Another motion alert. He opened the feed expecting to see Mike or a mail carrier. Instead, the screen showed static for 3 seconds, then cleared to reveal the same package on his porch, back in its original spot, sealed tightly again, as if it had never been opened. He froze, staring at the screen. His own reflection glowed in the glass of the door camera, the tiny infrared dots flashing. He called Mike immediately. When Mike stepped outside to check, there was nothing there. The porch was clear, dry, spotless. Ethan replayed the clip. This time, the recording looked perfect, bright, smooth, not a trace of static. But now the man in the brown uniform wasn't moving at all. He stood still in the frame, holding the box, unmoving for 10 full seconds. Only the leaves in the background swayed slightly. Then, in one clean blink of distortion, both man and package vanished. The timestamp read 11:59 p.m. He sat there, replaying it until sunrise. The next morning he noticed something else. The photos that had been inside the box were missing from his kitchen table. The only thing left was a small piece of tissue paper, folded twice, with a single inked line. "We already delivered what matters." After that, Ethan uninstalled the Ring app completely, but neighbors said his porch light still flickered on some nights around midnight, always followed by the faint whir of a motion alert that no longer existed. Not all visitors knocked to deliver. Some knocked to return. The apartment complex on Willow Lane wasn't new, but it was quiet. The kind of place where people kept to themselves, and the walls seemed to listen. Sophia had moved in 6 months earlier after finishing school, renting a small 1-bedroom facing the hallway. She liked the convenience, the steady hum of routine. That was, until her Ring door camera started alerting her at 11:46 p.m. every few days. The footage showed a man standing across the hall outside the apartment opposite hers. That unit, number 203, had been empty since she moved in. The man always looked the same. Dark jacket, cap pulled low, hands buried in pockets. He never spoke, never knocked, just waited for 30 seconds, turned away, and walked out of frame. The first time, Sophia assumed he was lost or looking for someone, but the visits continued. Same time of night, same strange stillness. She asked the building manager if someone had rented the apartment. He told her no one had lived there since the previous tenant died months before, an older man with health problems. The news unsettled her, yet curiosity made her check the timestamp pattern. Each appearance landed precisely at the same minute window, right around when the building's nightlights flickered on. Weeks passed. She grew used to the alerts, though she never opened her door during them. One night, she heard footsteps echoing after the notification and walked to her peephole. The hallway looked empty, but faint static hissed through her Ring speaker, as if someone breathed close to the mic. Her phone buzzed again instantly, with an auto-generated clip. The man leaving the hallway, the lights dimming behind him. The next morning she asked the only other resident on that floor, an older woman named Denise, if she'd noticed anything strange. Denise nodded uneasily and said she often heard knocking late at night, but assumed maintenance crews were testing alarms. When Sophia described the man, the woman's expression softened. "That sounds like Eric," she said quietly. "The last guy in 203. He used to come home from work around that time every night, always whispered into his phone before unlocking the door." That name stuck in her head. Later that evening, she searched local records. Eric had died 3 months before she moved in. Heart attack, right there in his apartment. He'd been a truck driver, always working late shifts. At 11:45 that night, Sophia watched the live feed rather than sleep. The hallway light blinked once. Right on cue, the shape appeared. The same pacing, the same pause outside 203. But this time he turned his head toward her camera. Although his face stayed shadowed, there was no mistaking a faint half-smile. She flinched when suddenly the view distorted, collapsing into jagged pixels before returning to normal, now empty hallway. Deciding to settle her nerves, she went to bed telling herself it was coincidence, old footage, maybe someone squatting during renovations. 2 nights later, the pattern broke. The alert came at 3:17 a.m., a full 3 hours late. Half asleep, she checked anyway. The hallway lights were off entirely, yet the camera's night vision glowed faintly. This time, no figure across the hall. Instead, the door handle to 203 slowly turned, released, and turned again, as though tested by invisible fingers. She sent the clip to the landlord, asking if maintenance entered late. He replied the next day, "We haven't set foot inside that unit since cleanup. Keys are locked in the office." The next recording was stranger. The man returned, but the timestamp read mid-August 3 months prior. The cloud system had pulled an archived clip by itself, auto-tagged as new activity. She watched again and again, convinced the pattern in the man's pacing formed something deliberate. 3 steps forward, 2 back, pause. Morse code in motion. One night, the footsteps grew louder, a heavy rhythm synchronized with the silent video. Sophia realized they were inside her apartment, echoing near the hallway wall. She grabbed her phone. The live feed showed him closer than ever, facing her camera directly now, mouth moving without sound. The connection cut off. When it returned, her hallway lights burned brighter than normal. 203's door was wide open. She rushed to the peephole just in time to see darkness swallowing the threshold. Then a distinct knock, 3 soft taps, came from her own side of the wall, the one opposite her bed. She left the apartment that night. When police checked the cameras, nothing showed. No person, no movement. Yet every file's metadata listed the exact minute Eric's old work badge had logged its final entrance at his trucking company, 11:46 p.m. Sophia moved 2 towns away, where she still keeps a Ring camera above her new door. She rarely gets alerts, but every few months, an empty hallway appears on her feed for 23 seconds, then fades to black. The log always reads, "Activity detected. Returning guest." If ghosts can revisit places, she thought, maybe the living can too, especially those who never accepted they'd left. If ghosts can visit, what about those still alive who think they never left? Her name was Claire, and she used her Ring camera mostly for peace of mind. With 2 young kids and a husband often traveling, knowing who came to the door let her feel in control of at least one part of life. Most of the time it was mundane: food deliveries, school flyers, the occasional salesman. But one Thursday afternoon, while folding laundry upstairs, she heard the soft sound of a notification from the app. Motion detected at front door. She almost ignored it. The timestamp read 3:28 p.m., the same time the mail carrier usually walked by. But something in the pitch of that alert, a different chime perhaps, made her glance at her phone. The camera feed showed someone standing on her porch, half turned from the lens. It was a teenage girl with a backpack, hair pulled up in a high ponytail. It took Claire a second to register the face. It looked exactly like Emily, their babysitter. Same delicate features, same soft expression. But Emily wasn't scheduled that day. In fact, she was supposed to be at her high school soccer practice an hour away. The girl raised a hand and pressed her face slightly toward the doorframe, as if trying to peer through the glass. Claire's initial irritation, maybe the sitter dropping off something she'd left, shifted to unease when the girl crouched slightly, looking toward the bottom of the door, whispering. Through the microphone feed came a faint murmur, unclear, words mixing with static. Claire adjusted the volume, expecting maybe a friendly greeting to her kids. But the voice carried a tone she couldn't place. Soft, coaxing, almost lullaby-like. "Come on, it's me. Open up, sweetie. I told you I'd be back." Then the figure glanced directly into the camera. The smile that followed wasn't the one she remembered. Claire bolted down the stairs. Before she reached the foyer, the sound of the latch clicking against the deadbolt made her freeze. Someone was testing the handle. Through the small peephole, she saw only movement, the flash of the ponytail as the girl turned away. The motion alert stopped. When Claire checked the feed again seconds later, the porch was empty. She tried to call Emily immediately. A cheerful ringtone played, and the actual babysitter answered, breathless, mid-practice. "Hey, Mrs. Warren, everything okay?" Claire forced a laugh, told her she must have mistaken someone else for her. Still, the thought of that identical face lingered long after the call. That evening, she showed her husband the footage. He frowned, rewound the clip, then froze. The timestamp showed 3:28 p.m., but overlaid at the top corner, the app listed the thumbnail as recorded yesterday. A glitch, he said. The company's firmware had updates, but when he checked storage, there was no file from the previous day at all, only today's sequence, somehow double-tagged. They brushed it off until Saturday evening. Claire was upstairs giving the kids a bath when her phone buzzed again. Motion detected. Front door. She tapped live view. The same girl was back. Same uniform, same stance, same calm whispering tone. Only this time, the voice was clearer. "It's okay now. We can play." "I'm here." Claire's 5-year-old daughter, Lily, looked up from the tub, whispering, "That's Emily." Claire's throat tightened. She ran straight downstairs, shouting for whoever it was to leave. Through the frosted glass beside the door, a shadow shifted. But when she turned the knob and opened it, the porch light illuminated nothing but still air. The motion alert blinked out. She called the police, embarrassed but shaken. They arrived 15 minutes later, searched the yard, even reviewed the clip she'd saved. The officer watched quietly, then asked, "You said this was 15 minutes ago?" Claire nodded. "Ma'am, the timestamp here says 2:14 a.m. The discrepancy didn't make sense. Neither did the fact that the uploaded clip showed faint, distant wailing beneath the whisper, like a baby's cry slowed down. The officer suggested it might have been tampering, maybe an old video playing back due to a system bug. He advised her to reset the camera password. Later that night, unable to sleep, Claire reopened the file to show a friend over text. It wouldn't load. Only black screen and mechanical ticking, each tick perfectly spaced 4 seconds apart. She recorded it with her phone. In the background, her daughter stirred in her bed and called out softly, "She says she can come inside now." Claire's heart hammered. She rushed upstairs to her daughter's room, found nothing but a curtain swaying near the open window latch. No babysitter, no stranger, just the muffled sound of the Ring camera downstairs replaying static. The next morning, she confirmed with the school that Emily had been at a team sleepover that night, 2 towns away. GPS on her phone tracked perfectly. The real Emily even texted apologizing again for missing her next babysitting shift. Trying to rationalize, Claire messaged Ring support asking about false face detections. They responded politely that while face-matching algorithms sometimes confused people, The system couldn't have produced audio from unknown sources, especially not words spoken live through a microphone that was disabled from the app's side. Her husband checked the camera logs one more time before throwing the device in a drawer. The playback list was empty, except one unmarked clip. He opened it reluctantly. For 8 seconds, the screen showed their front porch from an odd low angle, as if the camera had been moved. The date read 2 days in the future. In the final frame, someone stood just beyond the doormat, holding a child's stuffed animal, the white bunny their daughter slept with every night. The figure's face was half hidden by hair, but enough gleamed in the porch light to see the resemblance again. Emily's face. That was when Claire removed the batteries and left them on the counter. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was dark and quiet, the faint tone of a motion alert still echoed faintly from somewhere in the living room, long after the camera should have stopped recording. Sometimes the face you trust most is the one that shouldn't be at your door. The footage began like hundreds of other neighborhood alerts, someone in a reflective vest, clipboard in hand, walking from house to house. It was mid-afternoon in early May, warm sunlight filtering through the oak trees along Elmcrest Drive. The homeowner, a 48-year-old teacher named Robin, hardly paid attention to the first notification. She was grading papers at the dining table when her phone chimed. The live feed showed the man stop at her porch, ring the doorbell once, then step back smoothly. There was nothing threatening about him. Average height, baseball cap, a messenger bag slung across his chest. From his gestures, he looked like every other local who delivered flyers for landscaping services. He waited 5 seconds, glanced to his left, then reached into his pocket and drew out a small piece of chalk. With 2 quick motions, he pressed it near the lower side of the doorframe, almost out of sight, before tucking the chalk back into his pocket and walking away. Robin squinted at the screen, half assuming he was marking addresses he'd already visited. When she opened the door moments later, though, the faint symbol caught her eye. A curved line with a single vertical slash through the center, drawn in white. She bent down to rub it off, but the powder smeared instead of disappearing. It looked deliberate. Out of habit, she texted a picture to her next-door neighbor, Kim, asking if she'd gotten the same doodle. Kim replied quickly, no mark, but the same man had been at her door 15 minutes earlier. He'd only left a blank flyer with no company name. That night, Robin showed the clip to her husband when he came home. He frowned and said it looked like the kind of shorthand utility workers used before digging. They agreed to ignore it, planning to wash it off the next morning. At 2:18 a.m., the Ring app buzzed again, a new motion alert. This time the same man appeared, no vest, no clipboard, dressed in dark clothing. He approached silently, crouched near the porch light, then turned toward the chalk mark. With one finger he traced it once, wiped it clean, and replaced it with a fresh symbol, 3 short diagonal lines. The whole act took less than 10 seconds. Then he walked away into darkness. Robin watched the clip in disbelief. The next morning she called the non-emergency police line while her husband inspected the porch. The officer who arrived midday recognized the description immediately. He told them there'd been similar reports in nearby subdivisions, houses marked with chalk or tape near the doorbell or mailbox. Some were genuine utility codes, others weren't. Recently, detectives believed a burglary ring was using the signs to tag prospective homes, noting which ones had cameras, dogs, or visible valuables. The realization sank in layers that her doorbell camera hadn't deterred anything. It had simply documented how she'd been singled out. The officer suggested leaving the mark untouched for a day so patrol units could photograph it. That evening, Robin left all the lights on outside, even the garage floodlights. Nothing happened. No alerts. The following night, though, while the couple watched television, another notification came through at 11:42 p.m. The still frame froze on something different, a blank porch. But in the upper corner, just behind the reflection of the porch light, a faint blur suggested movement. Robin rewound. For exactly one frame, the figure of a person leaned into view, almost nose to lens, then static. The entire clip length read 1 second. She replayed it so many times she began to imagine details, maybe a hood, or unfinished words whispered just below microphone range. When she stepped outside minutes later, she found the chalk mark altered again. The 3 diagonal lines were now crossed out with one horizontal streak, a pattern that made no sense to her, but seemed to mean something to whoever left it. Within 48 hours, 2 burglaries hit houses 3 doors down. Both occurred on streets where neighbors had also found chalk symbols near their porches. Police linked the incidents, a coordinated scouting tactic. A suspect sketch circulated, showing a man using Ring doorbells as scouting tools, not deterred by cameras, but relying on them. When motion lights startled homeowners into checking phones, he'd watch timing through nearby parked cars, mapping habits. Robin realized with a chill that her camera's bright ring of LED light might have been part of what drew the marks. She removed the device for a few weeks, hoping to break the pattern. But the anxiety lingered. Each creak from the porch made her reach for her phone, even though no one was watching anymore. Months later, the same officer returned to tell her the group behind the markings had been arrested, itinerant thieves who traveled interstate identifying targets through fake delivery surveys. In his notebook, one of them had sketched a series of chalk patterns: curved line with a vertical slash, 1 adult female, day shifts, camera present, 3 diagonal marks, night check. Crossed out symbol, not safe, camera active. Robin listened quietly, remembering how visible her lens had been beneath the porch light. She repainted her door frames soon after. The faded streak still showed faintly beneath the new coat if sunlight hit right, a reminder scratched into wood grain. The ring stayed offline for months until she finally reinstalled it before winter. That very night, the alert tone chimed again. Her heart jumped, though when she checked, it was only wind stirring the bush by the steps. She almost laughed until she noticed a new chalk smudge on the walkway, smaller than a coin, plain white dust shaped like the top half of a circle. Whether left by rain or a hand she couldn't see, she never found out. But every time her phone lights up with that familiar notification sound, she hesitates before opening it, because sometimes marks tell who's watching, and sometimes they're left by things that don't need to look. But not all marks are human. The first time Marcus saw it, he thought it was just a raccoon too close to the lens. His Ring camera had been triggering false alerts for weeks: moths, passing cars, even his neighbor's cat setting off motion at odd hours. But this one looked strange from the start. The footage showed a dark figure moving at the edge of the yard, low to the ground, but balanced in a way that didn't match any animal he knew. It didn't scurry or hop. It glided. The timestamp read 2:18 a.m., middle of winter. The yard beyond the porch lay crusted with snow, wind pressing against bare hedges. The figure stopped halfway between the driveway and the house, directly beneath the porch light's glow. For a split second it straightened, too tall, easily 5 feet even hunched, and its reflective eyes stared toward the lens. Marcus paused the clip, assuming glare, but those eyes seemed forward-facing, not off to the side like a dog's. He worked for a pest control company, so he'd seen enough wildlife to know patterns. Coyotes were quick and wary. Possums froze, then fled. This one stood still for nearly a full minute, chest rising slowly, mist of breath visible. Then it turned its head, an oddly smooth swivel, and walked away on 2 legs before dropping back to 4 near the tree line. The next morning, Marcus checked for prints. Nothing but thin lines dragged through snow, like someone had brushed a broom handle across the surface. His wife laughed when he showed her the video. "Probably a raccoon stretching," she said. But that night, another alert came through. Same hour, same spot. The figure appeared again but closer, almost at the base of the stairs now, lifting one elongated forelimb toward the railing before lowering it. Marcus zoomed in frame by frame. The shape's outline flickered oddly, as if two frames overlapped. One four-legged, one upright. Then, at the 6th second mark, the camera blur jumped violently, refocused, and the space beneath the stairs was empty. The motion icon stayed red for another 30 seconds, even though nothing moved. He posted the clip on a community forum, asking if anyone else had seen strange animals in the area. Responses ranged from feral dog to escaped pet monkey, but one comment stood out, from a user claiming to be a retired wildlife biologist. It read, "That's not gait discrepancy from video lag. Look at limb ratio, arms longer than forelegs. Nothing local fits." The following evening, Marcus angled a floodlight toward the yard. At 2:14 a.m., motion triggered again. This time the thing didn't stay below the light. It stepped into it. Under that harsh glow, its fur, or what looked like fur, lay patchy, slick in spots, as if wet or burned. It blinked once, stretching eyelids side to side rather than up and down. The eyes caught the light briefly, pale yellow with pupils narrow as needles. Then came a subtle movement. The jaw turned downward farther than seemed possible, hanging loose for a second before tightening shut again. Marcus froze on his couch, watching live view. On screen, the creature bent forward, peering directly into the camera. He could hear faint scraping through the speaker feed, like claws against wood. Then, just as suddenly, the image cut to static. When the signal returned, every porch light in the frame was off, including his neighbors across the street. The next morning, he checked the camera. Around the outer rim near the lens, thin parallel scratches lined the plastic, 3 sets in uneven spacing. Beneath them clung a dark residue that smelled metallic, almost like rust. He called his neighbor Tom, who had a small Nest system facing the same direction. When they reviewed Tom's recording, the video showed only Marcus's floodlight turning off at 2:15 sharp, no visible creature. The sound, however, registered a low throbbing pulse, followed by a series of clicks, too measured to be wind. Marcus took the samples to a vet friend who sterilized animal traps for wildlife control. The friend swabbed the residue, ran basic chemical tests, and paused halfway through. "This isn't blood," he said. "It's keratin mixed with something synthetic, like melted nylon." They both stared at the results, not knowing what that implied. For the next week, nothing appeared. The alerts went quiet, even during storms. Relief set in, though part of Marcus missed the adrenaline that came from catching something rare on film. Then, late on a Monday, while closing the blinds, he noticed the neighborhood dogs barking toward his house. The Ring app chimed moments later. Motion detected. Backyard. He opened the feed. The creature stood half in darkness, half in snow glare, right next to the camera pole. It lifted a hand. Yes, hand, not paw, resting elongated fingers against the lens. The perspective warped as it leaned close, so close that its reflection formed twin circles of bright light across its eyes. Then, impossibly, it began to tilt its head until those pale pupils aligned exactly with the camera's infrared dots. The feed went black. When power returned the next morning, the camera was pointing upward at the eaves. Around the base of the mount, the siding carried long gouges leading outward toward the fence. The gate hung open even though it was latched from inside. Snow there was melted in perfect animal-shaped outlines, not prints, but impressions, as if something radiating heat had stood there too long. Marcus called animal control. They arrived late afternoon, skeptical until they noticed the damage. A veterinarian among them studied the marks around the lens and frowned. "Whatever this was," she said, "its claws were keratin, but the cut depth suggests metal tips. That's not a wild creature, maybe a person wearing something. They left snares and infrared traps around the yard. Nothing tripped them. But 2 nights later, the Ring sent one last clip. It showed only the empty backyard, floodlight humming softly. Then, at frame 10, a reflection appeared on the glass door, something tall and narrow standing directly behind Marcus's couch inside the house, frozen mid-turn toward the camera. He deleted the app that night. A week later, he sold the property to a couple new to town. They installed their own doorbell camera almost immediately. 3 weeks after moving in, they logged their first alert. The thumbnail showed nothing except faint claw scratches circling the lens, fresh and wet against new paint. After that, one homeowner learned danger doesn't always come from outside. Shannon had lived alone for nearly 3 years in a cozy single-story house outside Denver. Her schedule was predictable, working days as a paralegal, home by sunset, asleep before midnight. She loved gadgets that made her feel secure. Smart locks, motion lights, even a small Ring camera above the interior doorway that connected to her living room. It faced inward toward the kitchen, so she could check whether she'd locked up when anxiety flared. The habit started harmlessly. Every night, before brushing her teeth, she'd peek at the live feed and watch the empty hallway settle into shadow. Then, one Thursday in March, the routine changed. She woke near 2 a.m. to soft knocking sounds, evenly spaced thuds 3 in a row. Her first thought was branches against glass, but the window sat on the far side of the house. Half asleep, she grabbed her phone. The Ring app showed a new alert. Motion detected, interior door. Curiosity sharpened her pulse. She tapped play. In the feed, her living room appeared dark except for faint refrigerator light. Someone walked across the frame, her. Same robe, same disheveled hair, moving calmly toward the kitchen counter. She stood there a moment, looked in the direction of the camera, then vanished into the hallway. Shannon exhaled, confused. She was clearly awake now, still in bed, phone warm in her hand. The timestamp read 1:57 a.m., 3 minutes earlier. Logic tried to explain it. Maybe leftover footage cued out of order. Still, she couldn't ignore the exact reflection of her own robe sleeves swaying at the edge of the clip. She checked the doorway. Empty, quiet. Trying to calm herself, she replayed the footage a second time. Midway through, the sound feed crackled. Beneath the low hum of appliances came a whisper, her own voice, slowed and slightly distorted. Just 4 words, "Don't turn around yet." The file looped back to start, repeating the phrase faintly until she closed the app. The next morning, she decided it must have been an audio feedback glitch. She even joked about it at work. Still, she disabled the camera microphone that night. Around 2:30 a.m., another alert woke her. Motion detected, front hallway. Her stomach clenched. This time the preview showed no figure, only the kitchen light flicking on by itself. The clip lasted 11 seconds, ending abruptly when the feed blurred white. She unplugged the camera the following day, placing it in a drawer beside spare keys. But when she opened the Ring app that afternoon to delete data, a fresh thumbnail appeared. The image showed her kitchen sink and the blurred outline of someone standing exactly where the device used to sit. The label read, "Live Interior Feed." The green dot beside it flickered as though currently streaming. Shannon's hands shook as she refreshed the app. The feed vanished. Unsure what to trust, she reset her network. Later that evening, she reconnected the camera, reasoning that proof mattered more than sleep. Midnight passed uneventfully. At 2:08 a.m., another alert. This time she stayed in bed, watching live instead of playback. In real time, she saw herself walk into view. The same slow pace, same loose robe fall, eyes half open. The figure leaned on the counter, tilted its head, then began raising its arm toward the ceiling vent. Shannon whispered, "That's impossible." She looked at her empty bedspread, then back to the screen. Her double-mouthed something she couldn't hear. Suddenly, the live feed froze. A message popped up. Camera offline due to network interference. The outage lasted 90 seconds. When image returned, the kitchen light was on, but she hadn't moved. Then came a strange mechanical chirp, the unmistakable chime the app makes when a person enters the frame, only nothing filled it. The next day, she downloaded all saved files onto a USB drive, planning to show a friend who worked in IT. But when he opened them at his office, the timestamps shifted individually. Each video stamped exactly 10 minutes ahead of when they should have occurred. He frowned, explaining, "This doesn't look like desync." The device behaved as if it predicted motion that hadn't happened yet. Shannon laughed nervously, though deep down she felt vindicated. That night she placed the camera facing the opposite direction, toward her own couch, and sat beneath it reading. Nothing stirred for hours. Sometime after 1, her phone vibrated. New video available. She tapped open and nearly dropped it. The clip showed her from above, reclined on the couch, still reading. Then, after 8 seconds, a second figure stepped out of the hallway into the room, not creeping, just walking, sharing her slow posture exactly. The resemblance was perfect except for one detail. The figure's eyes tracked the camera, not the book. Suddenly, the real camera's blue status light across the room blinked once. Shannon turned toward it automatically and caught a fleeting reflection in the television screen opposite her. Twin shapes merged for a heartbeat, then separated, leaving only her alone in the glow of the TV. Panicking, she pulled the plug from the wall, killing power to every outlet near the router. Silence swallowed the house. The next morning, her Ring account showed unusual activity. Hundreds of tiny 1-second clips labeled "Wake Sequence Pending." None would open. She moved out 2 weeks later, transferring the system to a friend who wanted extra security. A month afterward, he texted jokingly, "Your old cam still sends me random tests at night. Always timestamps a few minutes before they happen. Freaky predictive software." She didn't respond. By then, she'd switched to analog locks and motion lights only. Yet the story that reached my inbox next didn't come from a stranger. It came from a woman named Paula, who lived 2 streets away from where I grew up. She'd always been known as the friendly type, the neighbor who brought in your bins if you forgot, who waved from her garden every morning. When she upgraded her porch light to include a Ring doorbell, she joked to everyone that the only thing it would catch was the mailman running late. For the first couple of weeks, that was true. The clipped, cheerful alerts showed nothing but delivery trucks and kids biking past after school. Then, one night in early October, she woke to that familiar chime. The notification said motion detected at 2:04 a.m. Expecting maybe a stray cat, she opened the app. The image that filled her screen gave her pause. It showed her neighbor, Russell, standing beside her trash bins, wearing slippers and a robe. He appeared to be dragging something wrapped in a large black plastic bag toward the narrow gap between their houses. He wasn't looking at her camera, but the posture was tense, shoulders hunched, head turned just enough to suggest he knew exactly where it was. Paula watched him pull the bag out of frame and crouch for several seconds before walking calmly back across the yard, closing his gate behind him. The footage ended there. She tried convincing herself it was yard work, maybe garden debris, but it was past 2 a.m, and the way he moved, methodical, heavy, felt deliberate. She saved the clip anyway. The next day, when she bumped into him near their mailboxes, he smiled warmly and carried on a chat about the weather as if nothing was wrong. That night, another notification arrived. Same time, same place. This time, the footage showed him carrying 2 bags, both dark and heavy, the plastic glinting under the porch light. He moved slower, pausing at the end of his driveway as if listening for something. Without meaning to, Paula whispered at her screen, "What are you doing?" The man set the bags down and looked directly toward the camera as though he'd heard her. Her pulse spiked. She closed the app, told herself it was her imagination. But the next morning she found faint drag marks in the gravel leading to the narrow side path. They disappeared behind his fence. 3 nights later, the camera caught motion again. Russell, hauling another set of black bags. Only this time he wasn't alone. A second figure followed behind him, smaller, stooped, face completely hidden under a hood. The two worked quickly, bringing the bags to the curb, placing them in the same shadowed strip. 20 minutes later, both were gone. Paula debated calling police, but hesitated. What if it really was just garbage? Their houses stood close together. She hated the idea of being labeled the paranoid neighbor. So she decided to test a theory. The next evening, she repositioned the camera slightly downward to cover more of the shared boundary. Within 24 hours, it captured something new, not Russell, but a thin trail of liquid seeping from beneath his gate, darkening the cement before freezing into shape like oil. When she walked outside the following morning, the stain was gone, the concrete freshly rinsed, and yet the water hose still rested where she'd left it, coiled and dry. That's when fear finally outweighed politeness. She sent the videos to the homeowners association, who forwarded them to local police. It took 2 days for detectives to show up, asking quiet questions around the block. On the 3rd day, an unmarked van parked on the corner. The next morning, Russell was taken away in handcuffs. Turns out the bags were full of stolen tools, electronics, and identity card printers. He'd been operating a small-scale forgery ring out of his garage, stealing parcels and reselling fake IDs online. The mysterious helper was his nephew, also arrested. When detectives searched the property, they found an old television screen wired to display the feed from Paula's own doorbell camera on loop. The implication hit her hard. He'd hacked into her system weeks earlier. He hadn't been avoiding the camera. He'd been performing for it. Every motion alert she'd received had been triggered by his remote connection, as if taunting her. The drag marks, the cleanup, the knowing glance. They were choreographed proof of how close he could be, while she watched helplessly from behind a screen. The police eventually traced the intrusion back through a shared Wi-Fi channel. Her network password had been compromised when she'd once lent him access to stream a movie together months before. Friendly neighborhood sharing, she said bitterly in the report. Afterward, Paula moved her router, fired her security company, and replaced every device that transmitted video. She still says the thing that unsettles her most wasn't what he had been doing. It was realizing how easily the tools meant to guard her privacy had become the very window he used to look back. Weeks later, before deleting the Ring account for good, she reviewed the stored clips one last time. The earliest alert, the very first time Russell appeared by her bins, had a hidden thumbnail she hadn't noticed. When she zoomed in, she could see her own reflection captured faintly in the window behind him, blue light from her phone gleaming off the glass. He wasn't looking at his work. He was looking straight at that reflection, right at her eyes through the screen. Justice arrived that time. Others weren't so lucky. Be enough. That night, 12:58 a.m., the doorbell rang again, early for once. Determined, he propped his phone on a table, recording a secondary video of the Ring's live feed. When it opened, static bloomed into shapes that clicked into clarity. The figure approached from the bottom edge, as though rising upward out of the ground. The face pressed inches from the lens, mouth curved into a grin that never moved. Nathan whispered, "Who are you?" For a heartbeat, the static shifted, and the figure mouthed something back. The subtitles auto-generated by the app read, "Answering." Then the bell tone chimed a second time, louder, echoing through every speaker in the house. He dropped the phone. The live feed kept ringing, showing nothing but that frozen smile. In the morning, he found the device unmounted, lying in the flower bed. It had powered off itself sometime before dawn. Yet the system log in his account showed a final saved clip titled, "Arrival Confirmed." The image, once viewed, captured his own doorway from inside again, but this time, daylight streamed through the windows. Beneath the short playback bar, the timestamp read 7:42 a.m., 5 minutes before he woke up and discovered the doorbell missing. He left the house for a week, staying with a coworker. When he came back, the porch looked untouched, except for faint scuff marks near the threshold. Reluctantly, he confronted the fear directly, checking stored data one more time. The folder labeled Events now included hundreds of short files, all with identical thumbnails, a still shot of the door, his own reflection faintly visible. Each file time-stamped 1 minute apart for 7 consecutive nights while he'd been gone. The pattern ended the day he returned. That night, no alert sounded, no recorded motions. Relief barely settled in before his phone vibrated at exactly 1:09 a.m. No preview image, just a gray box where the thumbnail should be. The title read simply, "Welcome Home." He never opened it. Instead, he packed his things that morning and sold the townhouse within a month. The new owner had the doorbell reinstalled, connecting it to their own network. 2 weeks later, the real estate agent forwarded Nathan a message. The buyer wanted to know if he'd left behind any personal items. There'd been strange nighttime alerts. Each clip showed a figure at the porch identical to the previous homeowner, wearing the same hoodie, same jeans, gazing directly at the camera. The officer assigned to Nathan's original report later told him quietly the device's serial number had auto-registered once more to an active account. That account listed the name Nathan and the same address, updated to current time. The final message in his inbox from Ring Support arrived days later. It said, "Your caller setup is complete. Enjoy your new connection." And that was the night Nathan unplugged every lens in his house, because sometimes, when the bell rings and nobody's there, it's not a stranger calling. It's the reflection that's learned how to answer. By the time I reached the 10th story in my research, I'd grown used to late-night messages, missing files, and the queasy feeling that technology sometimes stares back. But this one stayed under my skin because it started with my own camera. It was a Tuesday in late November. The air had that metallic cold that slows sound. Around midnight, I was editing footage from other submissions when a faint chime broke through my headphones. That familiar ring alert. I almost ignored it. My porch light was set to motion mode. Maybe a moth had drifted too close. Still, curiosity made me glance at the live feed. At first, the image looked normal. My steps, my welcome mat, the dull reflection of the streetlight on wet pavement. Then a shadow slid across the bottom edge of the frame, too deliberate to be wind. Whoever it was didn't step into view, just hovered there, half visible near the railing. The microphones on these cameras pick up everything, and when I turned up the volume, I heard it. A faint whisper. 2 words drawn out, almost affectionate. My name. I felt the kind of hush that fills a room before something breaks. I replayed it twice. The syllables matched my own tone perfectly, like hearing a recording of yourself from another room. Thinking maybe I'd left a clip open on the computer, I muted everything and played it again directly from the app. Still there. A voice identical to mine, whispering my name under the faint rumble of wind. I stepped to the front window. No movement outside, no footprints in the thin frost covering the walkway. The porch looked deserted. Just as I turned from the glass, my phone chimed again. Motion detected. The timestamp read 30 seconds after the first. On playback, the figure had moved closer. Hooded now, chin angled toward the camera, body framed so the face stayed hidden. It leaned slightly, whispering again, clearer this time. Let me in. Every muscle in my arms went cold. I hit the intercom, asking who they were, Nothing but static. Then, faint beneath it, my own voice again, same timbre, almost calm, repeating, "Come outside." The feed glitched. For a heartbeat, the angle reversed as if the camera faced inward, showing my front hallway from above the door. I stumbled back from both screen and entryway, waiting for the strike on the door that never came. When the picture restored, the porch was empty. I wanted to believe it was a breach, maybe someone spoofing the video feed. But the metadata wasn't right. The log said the camera had gone offline for exactly 43 seconds, then resumed seamlessly. No sign of disconnection. I called a friend who lived nearby, telling him something weird had happened. While waiting for him, I checked older recordings, trying to clear my head. Every clip of visitors, delivery guys, neighbors, the mail carrier, was gone. The folder contained only tonight's 2 files and one new unlabeled segment that showed up seconds after I'd stopped watching live view. It was titled Final Recording. I didn't remember saving anything under that name. Against every instinct, I hit play. The screen filled with my porch at 12:07 a.m., same night vision glow. I recognized myself immediately. Standing at the threshold, barefoot, door open, eyes unfocused. The version of me on screen stepped forward into the light, turned back once, and smiled directly at the camera. Then the feed ended. I checked every lock, convinced I was dreaming. The deadbolt was still thrown, keys untouched, my shoes exactly where I'd left them. But when my friend arrived 20 minutes later, his headlights caught a clear set of footprints leading from my door to the middle of the road. Bare, perfect impressions in frost that hadn't melted anywhere else. He tried to laugh it off until we saw the Ring device itself, lens fractured slightly inward, as if pressed by a thumb. When he removed the faceplate to inspect damage, the diode indicator blinked once and powered down. The app on my phone froze with a simple prompt, uploading to cloud, 99% complete. It stayed stuck there until morning. The next day I contacted support. They said no uploads had reached their servers from my account that night. The final entry, they told me, showed manual deletion from local memory at 12:07 a.m. The exact time my duplicate smiled into the camera. I should have left it there, wiped the account. Instead, I kept the unit, more artifact than tool. Weeks passed quietly. Then, near the end of December, the motion chime returned. I opened the feed. Nothing but static. Then one frozen frame appeared. Hazy, low contrast. It showed the same porch, but the date stamp flickered between tonight and a future I hadn't lived yet. In the center stood a hooded figure again, its outline transparent, edges shimmering as if layered over mine. The sound returned too, whisper layered on whisper until every word blurred together into one phrase that made my stomach knot. "We see you." My voice, countless copies deepened and flattened by feedback, crushing into one long echo. I yanked the plug from the router. The phone screen dimmed, but the faint chime continued for another 20 seconds after power cut. When it stopped, the screen displayed a single text overlay. Recording saved successfully. Months later, when I replaced the device for a new model, I mailed the old camera to a technician friend to dissect. He called after opening it, voice low. "The memory sector's fused," he said. "Nothing salvaged, except one clip hidden in corrupted data." He paused. "It's you. Standing on your porch pointing at the camera, saying something I can't fully hear. Sounds like, 'You're next.'" That was the moment I stopped using doorbell cameras altogether. Because maybe these stories were never about ghosts or glitches. Maybe each lens eventually wants to turn around. The last recording proved one thing. Sometimes the person outside isn't a stranger. Sometimes it's the version of you that technology already caught, waiting for the moment you finally open the door. When I look back at these 10 stories, they all trace one invisible shape, a circle drawn around the idea of safety. We bought these cameras to keep danger on the other side of the door, to make proof out of paranoia. But over and over, the footage showed something else. The danger didn't always approach. Sometimes it studied, waited, mirrored us. It's not the camera's fault. Technology never promises comfort, only clarity. Yet clarity itself can be terrifying. Each motion alert, each pixel of night vision, reminds us that the boundary between watcher and watched gets thinner every year. The lens sees more than we want, but less than we need. It catches the outline of fear and leaves us to fill in the rest. Maybe that's why these clips are so haunting. They prove nothing, but they confirm everything we worry about when we hear a sound outside after midnight. It's why people still scroll through their phone feeds at 2 a.m., hearts racing, half hoping to see nothing and half expecting to see themselves. If there's one thing these recordings teach, it's this: our tools for safety can also expose us. Every device that guards our home also listens, learns, and sometimes remembers more than we ever meant to share. We're framed inside our own security feeds, living proof that protection and vulnerability have the same reflection. So when that familiar chime echoes through a quiet room, maybe pause before checking. Ask yourself if the comfort you feel comes from control or from the illusion of it. Because the moment we start depending on the lens to tell us what's real, something out there might start watching the same way. I'm not telling you to rip the cameras down, just to look at them differently. Every watcher leaves a trace, even the ones meant to keep you safe. Sometimes awareness is the only real defense we have left. If you've ever caught something strange on your own Ring or Nest feed, something that made your stomach drop and your thumb freeze above delete, tell me about it. Share it in the comments. Send it to the inbox. Maybe your story belongs in the next video. And if these tales made you double-check that little blue light by your door, then hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Until then, stay curious, stay careful, and listen for the chime.